So, 2.2, huh? Yeah, one of the most hyped updates in this game's history has finally been released. I've given myself a decent amount of time to play around with it and gather my thoughts, and in this video, I'm just going to give some general thoughts on the update. Now, for full transparency, Rob said that basically any day now he's going to be releasing a massive bug fix update that's going to fix the game, and it's going to fix a lot of bugs, and it's going to make a lot of things work better, because right now the game is very unstable. And there's just a lot of tweaking he's going to do in this bug fix update. I say that here because a lot of things I'm going to talk about in this video are probably going to be subject to change. I don't usually write scripts, and this video is no exception. I don't actually have like a script prepared or anything like that. Everything I say is off the cuff and natural. However, unlike most of my other videos, I actually have a sort of list of bullet points to hit. And it's not really a script per se, it's more just like a general list of topics that I want to talk about. What would a better place to start be than the place where everyone seems to have started with this update, with Dash, the new Rob Top level. Dash, to me, is an interesting level because it's really amazing, it plays really well, and it looks really decent, but to me, it doesn't really feel like a Rob Top level, you know what I mean? And that's not exactly a bad thing. It does just feel like an evolution of sorts, like this level is sort of a change of pace from the other Rob Top levels. The only levels I can think of that this is similar to, maybe, are the Sub-Zero levels. In particular, this level makes me think of Power Trip a lot, with stuff like clicking on a part with a flashing effect to get a coin, and the really long just length of the level. This level isn't short at all. I mean, it's not like an XL, don't get me wrong, but it's one of the longer Rob Top levels, or at the very least it feels like it. The only complaint I really have about Dash is the coins, and honestly, I've let it simmer in my brain for a while, and I really hate the coins in Dash. Like, they're up there in terms of being low quality with basically all of the coins in base after base. Or like, that one coin in Can't Let Go where you just randomly have to hit a purple pad, even though purple pads wouldn't have been introduced to the player by that point. They're just bad coins all around. I like the first coin well enough, but the other two are so ungodly well hidden that, like, even I'm guilty of this. A majority of the people playing Dash are just gonna Google how to get the coins. Aside of that one little issue, though, Dash is really good, and I definitely think it lives up to its expectations. Of course, on top of that, there's also the Gauntlets, which I feel like, for a lot of people, myself included, is the second thing people are gonna jump into with this update. And unfortunately, the Gauntlets are kind of a mixed bag, more leaning on negative than positive for me. There's just a lot in here that I'm not a fan of. The demons you're gonna see more detailed opinions on in my next episode of monthly demon completions, and I put a weird emphasis on that because I'm recording this right now. I don't know if by the time this video is gonna be finished, that video is gonna be out or not, but the point is, either the next or it's going to be the first episode where the series switches from weekly to monthly. There you go. That's the best way to explain it. But the point is, that video, you're going to see my more detailed thoughts on the demons as well. You're going to see me beat all of them, but that doesn't address the non-demons, and I have some choice words to say about some of these levels. There are some good levels in the Gauntlets, but unfortunately, I only really like 5 of them, which, yeah, that does basically mean my opinion is that the Gauntlets should have never been split. We should have just stuck with only 5 winners, because, oh my god, some of these levels hold back the Gauntlets. You get, and I feel bad criticizing the World Gauntlet entries, because these are supposed to be representation for other countries, and obviously I mean no disrespect to the countries or the people in them. I'm just not a fan of the levels, and if it's any consolation, the decoration in these levels is phenomenal. It's just the gameplay that I dislike. You get levels like Xanadu, which play horribly, I'm sorry, it's just so bad. I think, honestly, what should have been done is we should have had the levels in the World Gauntlet, but we replaced Great White North with Bismarck. Then it would have been perfect. Nibble is amazing and a great introduction to the new Gauntlets. Replacing Great White North with Bismarck and putting Bismarck at the end would have given you something to do after Down Under, because, funnily enough, I think Down Under is easier than Planet X, which is really funny because Down Under's a demon, Planet X is not. But, you know, I really think that Nivell, Down Under, Planet X, Frostburn Peak, and Bismarck are the only levels in the World Gauntlets that I enjoy. The other ones are either forgettable or absolutely infuriating to play. As for the Discord Gauntlet, the levels are significantly better. The only levels I disliked in the Discord Gauntlet and the Split Gauntlet are Snowflies and Fog, Wildcard, and Sinless Ash. However, there is a major problem that brings down all of these levels, in my opinion, and that's, why was it a requirement for this gauntlet that they be in split paths? Like, I guess it would make sense for the Split Gauntlet, as that's the name of the gauntlet, so it makes sense. But the Split Gauntlet only exists because the Discord Gauntlet needed to be split into two gauntlets, and so, I don't know, I just feel like maybe change the name and don't have this be a requirement. Funnily enough, there are some levels that use the gimmick well, but then there are levels like Snowflies and Fog, where if you play the level normally, it looks like shit, and then if you play it at nighttime, it actually looks really good. And I have two things to say about that. Firstly, all the different paths do is make you change the time of day. That is so lame. That is really lame. It doesn't change anything aside of how bright the level is, and the fact that there are Christmas lights on the houses and all that stuff. Aside of that, it looks pretty much the same with the brightness turned down. And it makes me question, why require split paths for this at all? Why not just make it so that Snowflies and Fog is just the nighttime path and get rid of the daytime path entirely? It just drags the level down. But that's not the only issue with that level. Snowflies and Fog in particular bothered me, and I hated it just because the level was extremely long, and yet in that extremely long period of time, it felt like nothing happened, so I didn't care much for that level. I will say, though, these levels, Snowflies and Fog, Wildcard, and Sinless Ash, are heavily redeemed. Like, these gauntlets are massively redeemed because of stuff like Seasonal Haven and Change of Scene, which are amazing levels. In particular, I want to call out Double Dimension, as this level is really cool for having its two paths be, well, completely different levels, which is actually kinda neat. I also really like how Change of Scene specifically does it, because if you play the level normally, it's decorated to look like a stage play, and it's very obvious that it's a stage play. Everything looks like sets in a play made of props, and it's all obviously fake, and it's really cool. However, if you, as the level puts it, tap to unlock your imagination, or whatever it is that it says, if you tap at the beginning of the level, it triggers the, what I call, imagination mode, which is where you look at the exact same level from the perspective of someone imagining that the stage play is real, and that it's not a play, and that everything is actually happening. And so all of the stage play decoration and, like, the cardboard cutouts look like real monsters, and it adds, like, boss fights against them and all this stuff, and it's really neat. Overall, the new gauntlets have some amazing levels. I just think they're dragged out by the fact that the gauntlets were extended so much. With the World Gauntlet, we did not need that to be split into 3 gauntlets. Maybe I can understand splitting it into 2, but there are some levels for the World Gauntlet that, and this is horrible considering these levels are supposed to represent different countries, but some of these levels just feel the same, man. Another new feature that was added was lists, and lists are a good idea in concept, but I don't know how I feel about the execution. So lists are basically a way for people to make fan-made map packs that actually get ranked and give you rewards. Now, they don't give you Rob Top coins, as that would be unreasonable and ridiculous, and oh my god, I could only imagine how bad that would go. Instead, they give you diamonds, which I think is much more reasonable. And some of these lists are basically free. Like, when the feature started to roll out and some of these lists started to come out, some of them I had already beaten without even opening the tab, because I just happened to have already beaten some of these levels. Others, though, are genuinely difficult, and they actually highlight a big problem I have with GD, and that's in certain places in the game, if you beat a level in one place, it doesn't complete it everywhere else. This is places like the daily and the weekly and the gauntlets. If you beat a gauntlet level, it doesn't show up as completed on the servers, so you have to beat it twice. Or do what I did and just use Mega Hack to grab your completion, because fuck that. The reason this is annoying is because there are several levels in the lists that appear in the gauntlets, like Change of Scene, and I mean, like, I'm sorry, it doesn't really matter how much you like a level. being forced to beat it twice is never fun, especially with a level like Change of Scene that takes a decent amount of practice no matter how easy it is to remember what to do. As for the lists themselves, they vary heavily in quality and they provide different things. There are some lists that have some amazing new 2.1 and even 2.2 levels thrown in here. There are some that are more leaning towards the nostalgic side and have some older 1.9 levels. There's also a lot of gimmick packs, and I think these are a lot of the ones that I really like. Stuff like having an entire pack centered around memory, or having the 9 circles, which is 9 circles levels, which is really clever, and I think that's really funny. Though the choices for these circles levels are kind of bad in my opinion. Like, why would you force people to beat Poltergeist? I already had it completed beforehand. In fact, I already had this pack completed before I even opened the lists tab. But why would you force people to beat Poltergeist? This level's so fucking ass. You could have had people beat, like, Sharp Minor. Hell, even Flat Major would have been better than this shit. So, the next thing I want to talk about is the editor, and keep in mind, I'm not a skilled creator at all. I mean, I'm not bad, I can make some decent gameplay, but specifically in the decoration department, there's a reason I've never gotten a rated level, and I'd like to someday, but I'm just not a good enough creator to even consider making my levels rate-worthy. That being said, when I made my first 2.2 level, which, yeah, my first level's already out, the Azure Cave ended up being some of my best decoration. I built this decoration in a day, less than. It's that insane how much of a massive improvement the editor is, and it's kind of weird to say, but the editor really improved just because features were added. Like, for example, the circles effect would normally have taken me maybe an hour or so because I would have had to manually place all the triggers. Not only did I only need one set of color triggers, but there's now a build loop option, which builds spawn trigger loops for you, which is the biggest blessing ever. On top of that, the pixel art blocks, as hard as they are to get the hang of, look beautiful. And just in general, the editor has seen some massive improvements. I think my only complaint with the editor is that it doesn't fucking work. I mean that half-jokingly, because obviously it functions, it's a thing, but there are so many bugs involving the editor, and I normally wouldn't complain about bugs in a video like this just because I already know Rob is planning to fix a ton of them. But I just need to call out the fact that there are 2.1 features that were broken in 2.2. Like, how do you manage that? And there's just small little things here and there that annoy me. And not all of these affect building levels, too. These also affect, like, practicing a level. For example, I was practicing Crimson Clutter, and I wanted to place a start position in the duel, which is after the first mirror portal. And I noticed that the start position had a toggleable setting for mirror mode. However, I toggled it on, hit the start button, and it just didn't mirror me. Doesn't do anything. Why doesn't this do anything? Why doesn't the mirror mode button mirror you? Why?
Oh.
Reverse gameplay, maybe that's the one? No.
No, reverse gameplay is the 2.2 feature.
Wait, what the fuck just happened?
What?
Why am I on that start position now? What? What the fuck? What is happening? What did I do? Why is this mirrored now? Wait.
What the fuck?
What? Wait. Wait. What the fuck?
You're not screen sharing GD, by the way, just so you know.
Oh, it's fine. I'm using this for footage. What the fuck? The more I mess with star positions, the less they make sense. What the fuck?
Oh,
What has been done to my beautiful practice tool? There's just a lot of stuff here and there just randomly across the editor that doesn't seem to work too well, and a lot of these are obviously bugs that RobTop is going to have to fix, but there's a lot of bugs that Rob is going to have to fix. I have encountered so much weird stuff just messing around in this game. The worst two bugs I've encountered are, A, I have lock cursor and show cursor enabled, but I can't see my cursor in levels. For whatever reason, even though show cursor is enabled, I can't see my cursor. And I think, like, one of these doesn't work if the other is enabled. I'm not really sure, but it's just weird. The other bug, and I'm not really sure why this happens to begin with, I haven't seen anyone else talk about this, and it'd be nice to know if other people experience this or have a fix for this, because I haven't been able to find one, but consistently, I'll be playing levels, and then the game will just randomly pause when I click. I didn't click on the little pause circle on the top right. Oftentimes it happens and my mouse is hovering over the restart button, which is bad for obvious reasons. But I'll just be, like, straight flying with a ship or something, clicking repeatedly, and then the game will just pause, and I'll accidentally click the restart button. It's so annoying, and I have no idea why this is happening. I didn't pause the game. I didn't pause the game. You saw when I died just now? Because it looked like I didn't click. I clicked and held and kept holding, and then when I let go on the next attempt, the pause menu appeared. What the fuck is this bug? I swear to fuck, dude. My mouse is nowhere near this pause button. My left hand was not on my keyboard. It just happened again! Literally the next fucking attempt! Why does this keep happening? Why? What the fuck? I'm not gonna play Crimson Clutter like this. I don't want to risk the game pausing in the middle of a run. Like, I don't want to get past my best and have the game pause on me like that. I can't play the game like this. I can't do it. This is making the game completely unplayable. While we're talking about things that were changed in the editor that I don't like, let's talk about the ship physics. So, during the development of 2.2, when we were still in 2.1 and we were still waiting for 2.2 to come out, I was under the impression that Rob was completely fixing some bugs, like the robot jump bug and all that stuff. And it turns out I was wrong. Rob added what's called the legacy menu, which allows you to enable old bugs, which kind of means they're technically not bugs anymore, because a bug implies that it's a flaw in the code that the developer didn't intend, and now they're intentionally left in, so it seems like you can't really call these bugs anymore. But regardless, weird, quirky physics things from 2.1 you can enable in this legacy menu, and it's stuff like the robot jump bug and all of that stuff. And this is cool because this means, while some old levels are going to break from stuff like slopes being messed with, they're not going to break as badly as you would have expected, because levels like Instinct by Crazy Man 50 Real use this gimmick where, coming off of a slope with the robot, you hold and the robot almost like straight flies. It's really weird. Stuff like that should, in theory, still work. Where this wraps around to the ship physics and where this becomes an issue for me is one of the things that was changed in 2.2 was how heavy the upside-down ship is. And as a result of that, how heavy the duel is, because the duel ship uses the properties of the upside-down ship for whatever reason. What Rob did is he made the upside-down ship lighter than it used to be, because the ship used to be heavier than the normal ship. If you made the ship upside down, it was heavier. The thing is, right off the bat, I feel really weird using the upside-down ship physics. I don't like them. And it's not because I'm not used to them, and it's not like, oh, you need to get used to them, you're just used to the old ship physics. Because here's the problem I have. It doesn't feel like the gravity is the same. It feels like now the upside-down ship has the opposite problem. It feels like it's lighter than the normal gravity ship to me. And I can't prove this definitively. I have no clue if this is true. All I know is that if I straight fly with the ship upside down and normal gravity, I have to click more for the normal gravity ship than I do with the upside down ship. And if I do the same click pattern for both, the ship sort of climbs down the screen. I don't understand. At all. To me, it feels like I'm clicking the exact same way. I really, really hate this because it makes Upside Down Ship feel really, really uncontrollable. It's definitely a slight improvement from what the old ship physics used to be, but honestly, with the old ones, I was still able to adjust, and I was still able to fly pretty straight with it. With this, I can't control my ship at all when I'm upside down, and I don't like it. Here's the other issue I have with this, though. If these were the universal physics, and this change was universal, I think this would be fine, because then I could get used to the upside down ship physics, and I'd eventually learn to tolerate it. The problem is that the old upside-down ship physics still exist as a legacy feature. Now, this in and of itself wouldn't be a problem, as maybe this would exist purely just to bug fix some levels. But there's a second thing about the legacy features that I neglected to mention, and that's they are on for old levels by default. What this means is that any level made before 2.2 will always have the old upside-down ship physics unless they are changed by the level creator. Going further than that, any level that you started creating in 2.1, but you finish in 2.2, will have these legacy settings enabled. So here's Neutralia, a level that I started building in 2.1, but I'm still working on to this exact moment. And if I go here, I click options, and then I click the second options button, you can see that all of the legacy things are turned off, which means stuff like the robot jump being fixed is off, the 2.2 changes are off, which means my level, even though I don't want it to, by default has the old ship physics, which means any future verifications of old levels like Flame Wall still have the old physics. And this is going to make it really confusing for players who don't realize this, because you'll have a situation where two completely different levels have two completely different physics, and there's no way for the player to know that unless they know this piece of trivia. And because of that, even if you do know, it is so much more difficult to adapt to the new physics, because most of the levels on the servers have the old physics. I hate this. If you really don't believe me, and you don't believe that the physics are still the same as they always were on old levels, just go fucking play Change of Scene. Because there's this part in Change of Scene where you kind of face backwards, and it's this really cool, really meta part. It's labeled as the Matrix part. And there's a part where you become the ship. And now, if you need to know how this part works from a technical detail, it uses a mixture of the dual misalignment bug from 2.1 and moving objects to move the level to the left. It's all an illusion being done with moving objects, and it's really cleverly done. Think about the swing copter setup, and it works kind of like that, right? And as a direct consequence of this, the ship part in this duel, it uses the old physics. And anyone who plays Change of Scene right now in the Gauntlets will notice that the ship right here feels unnecessarily heavy, to the point where when I beat the level, I didn't even bother trying to straight fly. I just swiped the ship up and down very slowly because that gave me more control. Why? Why did this have to be a thing? I really just don't like how the way this was handled, because I'd rather the new ship physics be forced on every level and just roll out bug fixes for levels that break as a consequence. Because I would much rather levels be broken and require a fix than this inconsistency. It's just really, really awful, and I don't like it. But let's just shift gears for a second. Instead of talking about features that are in the game that should not be, let's talk about a feature that's not in the game that should be. Why was Disable Shake Trigger removed? Why? So what I'm about to say purely comes from just stuff that I saw on Twitter and things that I've been told from people in the community, and this is very speculation-y, and it could be complete misinformation, so take this with a massive grain of salt. In fact, Demon List mods, if any of you are watching this video, type up a comment explaining exactly why I'm right or why I'm wrong. Just a little corrections comment, and I will pin your comment under this video. If any Demon List mods are watching this video, that would be appreciated, as I can't verify whether or not this is true, and I really, really don't want to look like an idiot just spreading misinformation. But either way, I need to mention this because it's just too funny not to mention. So apparently, according to what I've seen on Twitter, and from what some people in this community have told me, apparently the reason Disable Shake Trigger was removed is because a individual, who I'm obviously not aware of who they were, and even if I was, I wouldn't share that as I don't want to get people harassed, but apparently an individual who worked on the Demon List staff directly contacted RobTop and was like, hey, Disable Shake Trigger nerfs levels and makes them easier. You should probably tell RobTop to remove this as it can be used to cheat. And if that's true, this is just the show hitbox on Deathban all over again.
Boy, I really hope somebody got fired for that blunder.
Here's the main issue I have with this. Let's say, hypothetically, the Shake Trigger does nerf levels. And in fairness, you do have levels like Cognition where it just spams Shake Triggers as a joke to throw the player off, so yeah, getting rid of the Shake Trigger in some cases could make levels easier. Have you seen the beginning of Cat of Tartarus with Shake Triggers? It's fucking hilarious. So with that, let's just go off of the assumption that, yeah, the Shake Trigger makes the game easier. And to that I ask, who the fuck cares? Why? Why is that such a big deal? You turn on a setting that makes the game easier, and that setting was intended by the developer. Why is that a bad thing? I mean, in speedruns, people will enable game settings that definitely make the game easier. Look at the GTA speedrunning community, where they literally turn the slider that turns the terrain off all the way down. Like, it is normal for people to enable settings that make the game easier. And on top of that, this isn't even that extreme of an example of it. All the Shake Trigger being disabled does is make it easier to see what you're supposed to do. That's it. It's so stupid. Like, what's next? Are we gonna start banning low detail mode? But on top of all of that, you know what the most hilarious part to me is? For the past several years, for pretty much the entirety of Update 2.1, the Demon List, specifically the side that grinds the levels and plays them, the entirety of that side of the community, the backbone of it is a feature that makes the game easier. Now, don't get me wrong, this was also removed, and now everyone's playing on 240, but the Demon List complained about this one being removed, and you probably know where I'm going with this. I'm talking about the physics bypass. Alright, so follow my train of logic, right? The community took advantage of a bug that allowed them to make the game easier. The bug being physics bypass, of course, because the whole idea of it was if you buy a high refresh rate monitor, your frame rate would go up, and your frame rate going up would allow you to make more precise timings, making stuff like the 8 Jumps of Hell and Silent Clubstep easier. when this feature was removed from the game, or rather, when the Demonless community finally realized it was going to be removed, it went up in flames. You had people like Pico and Vision complaining about it on Twitter and Dasher Podcast, and, you know, everyone making it sound like it was the end of the world, and talking about how Rob should really consider adding 360 instead of 240. I don't get how you can go from that, basically getting angry that a feature that makes the game easier was removed, to asking for a feature to be removed because it makes the game easier. What the fuck even is the Demon List at this point?
Boy, I really hope somebody got fired for that blunder.
And on top of that, assuming everything I just said is false and that Twitter is lying, which is a very realistic possibility, let's be real, I still don't think that explains why the feature was removed, and I still think the feature being removed is stupid and dumb, and why was Disable Shake Trigger removed? It doesn't make any sense to me. If you wonder why I care so much about Disable Shake Trigger, well, put it quite simply, a lot of levels have shake effects in them that look like absolute garbage, some of which were put into the levels as a joke, and the creator expected you to turn on Disable Shake Trigger. End Level put a really obnoxious shake effect in Cognition that basically goes through the entire drop, and he put it in there just to make fun of people who play with Shake Trigger. On top of that, disabling Shake Trigger nerfing the level is so unfathomably rare that if you're so worried about it, just do what the Art of the Blade does, and I can't believe I just said that sentence out loud, but just do what the Art of the Blade does and build a rig at the beginning of the level that kills you if Shake Triggers are disabled. If it's that important to you, just do that. I want to assume that this story isn't true, because that would do two things. Firstly, it would mean that the Demon List is not as dumb as they sound, because Jesus Christ, the story makes them sound really stupid. And B, it makes it sound like Rob just removed the feature because, potatoes, I don't know. Removing Disable Shake Trigger randomly, because why not, sounds really stupid, but it's way less stupid than RobTop being influenced by the 1% of the community. I want to dial things back for a second and be a bit nice and make things a little more positive, because as you probably can tell, the last bit was a little bit negative, and the next bit is also extremely negative, and I want to make it very clear, before the next bit and in regards to the last bit, none of that makes me think this update is bad. I just have negative things to say. It doesn't mean I dislike the update. I'm pretty positive towards it, and I want you to keep in mind that there are negatives and positives to everything, and I'm basically just being a critic here, so, you know, don't take this as, like, me saying the update's bad or anything, because that's not what I want to put across. One of the biggest problems with 2.2, according to specifically Twitter, YouTube, and Discord, because I've seen it in the official GD Discord, a lot of people are complaining that a lot of levels have broken, mainly due to the physics changes. Specifically, what I think has caused it has been changes to slopes and how slopes work. This is extremely overblown. A lot of people have been using this as an excuse to call the update bad, and have been tearing into the update for this reason alone, and I think that that's really unfair, because of two things. Firstly, every single update GD receives will break levels. Look, I know it's been 6 years since this game got an update. This is the first update the game has gotten in 6 years, so a lot of people aren't used to it. But if you were around when this game got frequent updates, pretty much every single update this game received broke levels. It took Red World God knows how long to get fixed from that, and that was a much worse decision. That was taking a block with collision and removing its collision, which I think is a significantly worse idea than what we got in 2.2. 2.2 really didn't break things that badly. But all in all, my point is that every update has, and every update in the future will, break levels. It just happens. I mean, you're changing the way the game works, of course it's going to break things. Especially when this creator relies so heavily on bugs to make their gameplay at this point. And to that, I gotta praise Rob Top for just thinking to add the legacy physics. I originally thought that Rob was gonna do stuff like fix the robot jump bug and stuff like that, and the fact that he didn't makes me really, really happy. The only legacy feature I don't like the inclusion of is the ship, which I already touched on that earlier in the video. In general, the count of levels that I've noticed that have been broken are extremely low, and the ones that have been broken, people are mainly just upset because they like the levels. The only one that I can think of that was really bad is there was a level in the Gauntlets that became impossible, which is admittedly really, really funny, but it was fixed within, I want to say, a day or two. So it really wasn't that big of a deal. And considering it was like the second or third demon in a gauntlet filled with demons, unless you were really good at the game, you're probably not getting to that level that fast anyway, so I'd say the fix came out pretty efficiently. Aside of that, most of the bugs I noticed were in, like, Kermal levels and stuff like Windy Landscape, which are popular levels, and it's really easy to point out the amount of levels that were broken, but when you compare it to the amount of levels that were not broken, and you look at some of the levels that were not broken, you get kind of surprised how many levels were not broken, and even furthermore, you get surprised by the fact that certain levels you expected to be broken were not. Falling Up, by all accounts, not only works, but from what I've been told, it's actually less buggy in 2.2 than it was in 2.1. Meaning the opposite problem happened here. The physics change fixed a level. Which I can't wrap my head around, because Falling Up's duel was always something that gave me a massive, like, fit of negative emotions because of how awful it played. From what I've heard, it plays fine now. On top of all of that, if you do find a level that either becomes harder or straight up impossible due to a bug, Pause, one of the moderators, put out a spreadsheet in which you can submit levels that are broken and he'll fix it. And they promise in said spreadsheet to make sure to maintain the level's creative integrity, so this is a non-issue, and I really don't like how much... I mainly see it on Twitter, but I see it on Discord as well. I don't like how much people are trying to imply that the update is bad simply because some levels broke, because that's a non-issue. The levels are going to get fixed, the quantity of levels that are broken are small, and on top of that, there are levels that were fixed because of this. Most of the levels that I find are broken are like rare, obscure 2.1 levels that nobody's heard of, like Coronavirus. Yes, there is a Geometry Dash level called that. But like I said, most of the bugs that exist are in levels that people usually don't play to begin with, and on top of that, they're being fixed in a pretty hasty manner, so you submit a level as bugged, and it usually gets fixed within a day or two. It's really not that bad. I will admit, it is weird that some levels, like Windy, are taking so long to be fixed, but at the same time, in this specific instance, this is such a strange instance of a bug, and such a strange circumstance that, honestly, I have no idea how I would fix this looking at it, and, yeah, this is a weird bug. I don't know how this is going to be fixed. But then again, considering Rob is supposed to be putting out a bug fix update in a couple days, maybe that will fix it? Who knows? I don't really know what's going on with this, but I will say cut, Pause, and the rest of the moderation team some slack on stuff like this, because not all of these bugs are simple to fix. The bugs are not indicative of any issue with the game's physics or the game itself. For most top players even agree the game is fine. Zoink beat Slaughterhouse and said that it's akin to 360 Hz quality. The physics are good. People complaining about the game or the physics are either misinformed or they're being dishonest and trying to smear the update as worse than it is. Why people are doing that? I don't really know. Some people just really have a vendetta against 2.2 for some reason. A really weird thing is that before 2.2 came out, a lot of people really wanted the update to fail. I don't really know why, but a lot of people just hated the idea of the game updating so much that they wanted the update to just fail. And it really annoys me, because a lot of these people were the same people saying stuff like, nah, the update's never coming out, 2.2's fake, it's a conspiracy. And then these same people say stuff like, man, if the update does come out, it's gonna be bad. even though it's not out yet, and you can't say that definitively. And what I find so funny about this is that when 2.2 finally did come out, a lot of these people realized, oh wait, the update's actually good, and they started scrambling for reasons to nitpick and say the update's bad. Like, they'd look at a tiny niche focus of the game that, like, no one cares about aside of, like, a very specific part of the player base, and they'd go, man, this one specific feature that barely anyone knows about doesn't work anymore, this update's bad. I'm not going to be showing the tweet or any specific wording in the tweet, as I don't want to lead to this person getting harassed, and yeah, that's just not what I'm doing. Don't harass anyone I talk about in this video. That being said, there was a person on Twitter who was complaining that Jump Ring's grace frames were removed. Now, if you don't know what a grace frame is, a grace frame was a... I don't even know if it was an intended mechanic, but it was a mechanic in 2.1 where you could actually click a jump ring exactly one frame after your hitbox was no longer touching the jump ring's hitbox. It was called a grace frame because you had a grace period where you could still click. And in very rare, very overly specific scenarios, this makes some jumps impossible. And to that I say, who cares? That is the easiest bug fix in the world. Just move the jump ring 1 or 2 pixels down. The immaturity I've seen around this update's release has just been mind-blowing, to say the least. Most people have handled it fine, don't get me wrong, but there has just been an overwhelming amount of unnecessary negativity and nitpicking that I've seen when it comes to this update. And a lot of people are basically calling the update bad because of minor, tiny little issues. And that's where I need to make a distinction. If you are upset that levels were broken because of the update, that's fine. Be upset that Windy Landscape is impossible. That's fair. That is a reasonable thing to be upset about. But to imply that that makes the update bad is just stupid. Alright, so I have one final topic that I want to discuss when it comes to this update, and it's the big elephant in the room that I have avoided intentionally up until this point. Platformer mode. How do I feel about it? What is my opinion on it? At its core, I think platformer mode is actually pretty well implemented. I'm not gonna lie, when I booted up the tower, I was pretty blown away by how good it feels to play. I will say I have some issues with it, but we'll get into those later. For now, I just want to talk about the mode itself and my first impressions of it. Now, I didn't upload my completions of the tower levels, but that's mainly just because my content isn't really centered around platformer. Like, if I find a platformer level that really warrants it, I'll probably review it, but for the most part, like I said, I come to this game for the side-scroller mode, and that's what I mainly plan to stick with. I do, however, really like a lot of what's been done with platformer mode. I like the little subtle differences between platformer and side-scroller, like the fact that slopes can actually have friction and physics, which is really interesting and cool. It has a lot of problems, which we will be getting to in a second, but most of those problems aren't with the game mode itself. They more have to do with what people have been doing with the game mode. I think the best place to start off with is the tower itself. Now, first of all, yeah, I'm not uploading the tower levels. I just don't really want to because, like, I don't really think platformer is something that I can make good content out of. Like, if I try to make content out of platformer mode, it's going to be very boring, and I already know how I'm going to handle platformer demons. They're going to end up in the monthly demon completion videos on the off chance that I beat them, but the way I'm going to do it is I'm just going to splice together the successful runs from the checkpoints. So, like, I'll show myself getting to a checkpoint, and then I'll cut out all the deaths after the checkpoint, and I'll show the run from that checkpoint to the end, just to make a seamless completion video, because I don't think I could do very interesting commentary for platformer completions, and I think they would break the pacing for monthly demon completions. I did enjoy the tower levels. They pissed me off, don't get me wrong, but they pissed me off more in the way getting over it pisses you off. Basically, this gave me the definitive rage game experience, and that means they're working. The levels did what they're set out to do. The levels are oddly skill-based, and the movement in these levels are very interesting. For example, in this one part right here, there's this part where you land on this wooden bridge, and you have to make a jump while the bridge is moving. If you play it enough, you learn that if you go towards the left side of the bridge, it gives you way more time to do the jump and makes it way easier, so you adjust yourself to the left, then let it move down, and then jump. And that sort of strategic element makes things really interesting, and also frustrating but rewarding to figure out. Most of platformer is like this, really. From what I understand, a lot of it is more figuring out how to beat the level than actually having beating the level be hard in and of itself. Basically, if you beat a platformer level once, you always know how to beat it from that moment onwards, unless there's an element of RNG. A lot of this comes with a massive asterisk, however, and that big asterisk is the Cursed Thorn. This boss is one of the worst things I've ever dealt with in this game, aside of the existence of another level we'll be talking about later. A lot of people, when you complain about this boss on Twitter, will simply respond skill issue, which really infuriates me because a lot of people don't actually know why this boss is so frustrating. And in fairness to those people, it is very hard to explain why this boss is frustrating. I'm gonna do my best to explain what makes it so frustrating, but a lot of this is hard to explain, and I don't really have visual examples as I don't want to play this level again, I'm sorry. Basically, what will happen is the boss will spit one attack at you, and so you'll move to the right to dodge it. And then it will spit another attack at you, and you'll move to the left to dodge it, but by moving to the left, you end up hitting the first obstacle and dying. And you end up in these sort of situations where the level traps you like that, and it makes it frustrating. Even more awkward is, okay, you could argue that's skill issue, but maybe you move a little bit less to the left, and you're in between both those attacks. Well, then Cursed Thorn just decides to slam onto the fucking ground and squish you. It's like, motherfucker, what am I supposed to do in that situation? There's nothing I could have done there. That's what makes this boss so annoying, is that it's inconsistent. You come across scenarios where attacks just end up undodgeable. I actually think Cursed Thorn would be an amazing boss if there was some kind of health system implemented into the level. Maybe you could take like 3 hits before you die. That would solve a lot of the issue because, well, there are simply some attacks that just can't be dodged, and that makes it really frustrating. Especially when one of the coins requires you to play the level in its entirety really, really fast without checkpoints, because you basically have to speedrun the level for one of the coins. When 2.2 first dropped, we immediately got a decent amount of platformer levels that gave us a wide range of quality. Even Serpunge came back and dropped a level, which I really didn't expect to happen, because I thought he moved on to game dev stuff. Funny thing about Serpunge's level, one of the songs you need for the level is Stereo Madness, and the reason you need it is because there's a part where it drops you into Stereo Madness as a fake out, and it actually plays the song. The level doesn't use the Rob Top version of Stereo Madness, it uses the full version with the song ID from Newgrounds, and the problem with that is there are levels that use the full version of Stereo Madness as the replacement song for Nongs. So when I played the level this happened. Wait, what the fuck? Wait. Stop it! Stop with the gunslinger! Stop it! Wait! What the fuck is happening? Why it... Help! Serpunge, what the fuck? While I enjoyed a lot of platformer levels, a lot of them I did not, and I find that the reason I end up not enjoying a lot of platformer levels is because of their obsessive focus on artificially forced difficulty. See, the GD community is certainly an interesting place, with a lot of cons and a lot of pros. One of the biggest downsides of this community, however, is their obsessive tendency to hyper-focus on difficulty. This has already done a ton of damage to Platformer, and it hasn't even been out that long. What do I mean by that? Well, simply, every hard level in Platformer mode feels incredibly forced, and all of them feel like they'd be more enjoyable if they were easier. And it's not because of skill issue. There are people who find levels like I Wanna Be the Guy easy, and still boring and unfun. The issue with them is that a lot of them don't actually focus on being interesting in terms of actually being a platformer. They focus way too much on super tight jumps, and they don't throw anything interesting in the mix. I Wanna Be the Guy is a really good example of it. This level is based off of a platformer by the same name, and it does a horrible job. A lot of people are hyping I Wanna Be the Guy up as if it's like this amazing level on the same tier as some shit on the demon list, like this is the Limbo of platformer mode, which... the fuck no! No, this is like the Stacker Ultimate of platformer mode. Let's get the obvious thing out of the way first. The gameplay. What do I say? It's terrible. It's basically just a bunch of overly precise robot microclicks, and that's the entire level. But what annoys me about this is this doesn't even represent I Wanna Be the Guy that well. I Wanna Be the Guy is not focused on being a super difficult platformer game. The actual game that this level is based off of is more akin to joke rage game platformers meant to mess with the player and make them laugh. It's more akin to stuff like Cat Mario or The Narrator is a Dick. The idea of these games is that they're not that hard on face value, but they put things in there to just frustrate and inconvenience the player. And so what do we have here? A level in a rage-based platformer that is based off of another rage-based platformer. This should be a slam dunk, an immediate, perfect idea. This should implement so well into GD. And then it's basically just platformer mode shardscapes. Another good example of this is jet lag. Now, jet lag, just like the Cursed Thorn, is one of those things where if you complain about it, people try to say you have a skill issue. But skill is not the issue here. This level is just frustrating by design in a way that's really unfun. And I need to make a distinction here. Rage games are frustrating, but you usually enjoy the frustration. In this case, this level's frustrating in a way that's not fun, and I'll break down why. The first problem with jet lag, right off the bat, is that you move really quickly, which that in and of itself wouldn't be an issue, because platformers like Sonic the Hedgehog have always been really popular because you're moving at such a fast speed. The problem is that this level is filled with slow speed platforming. So you make a level in which you move extremely fast, but then make it so that if you move extremely fast, you die. What's the point of giving me such a massive amount of speed, then? What's frustrating about this is that on the second half of the level, they use the speed pretty well in some of the jumps. They have these really long jumps where you need to run off the edge of the platform and then jump last minute to make the jump. Those are cool, and if the level had more of those, this would be really fun. And those jumps are hard, so you can't say it's a skill issue thing because I'm encouraging a difficult type of gameplay here. But instead, the level is focused on these super tight, oddly specific platformer moments, which is annoying when you realize this level has ice physics. See, when you are on the ground, there's a little bit you glide. It used to be way worse. This level actually got updated recently to basically remove the ice physics, but it didn't remove it entirely, and you do still slide a little bit, and so everything I'm about to say still does happen. Basically, you'll try to do these super short, overly specific jumps, which are already unfun to begin with because you just kind of want to keep going, but on top of that, let's say you land on the platform perfectly, and you stop holding right. Well, you stop holding right in the air, but due to your momentum, you keep sliding right, you fall off the platform, and you die. Which is especially frustrating when you land in such a way where you're next to a spike in between two platforms and you can't escape. Meaning, you have to have the extra smack in the face of killing yourself. Shit like this is really frustrating, and I specifically hate this level for this reason. It is a culmination of many different flaws, all of which combine to make every jump in this level frustrating. And it's a just really bad design choice in general, because apparently these slidey ice physics are like the default, I guess? Which, in fairness, Rob said in the next bug fix update he's going to remove this, but he's going to remove it with an asterisk. He's going to do what he did with the ship physics. He's going to leave them in, but make it so that you can turn them off. Which means it's going to be inconsistent across which level which happens. And let me say something. If you're watching this and you create platformer levels, turn off the ice physics if you're making your level a precision platformer. It's okay if they're left on for something like a puzzle level, but for something like this, it's just not enjoyable at all. I also just hate this obsessive focus on tech in levels. This is stuff like Chromicide. In general, I just don't like this idea of focusing on difficulty and tech, because they're some of the most inaccessible things in this game. Platformers should be focused on making levels in the same way you would try to make your own game, but people are just treating them the same way they treat side-scroller GD levels, and in my opinion, that doesn't work, because every single level is going to feel the same, and at least in my opinion, they're all going to end up being unenjoyable. Give the Cursed Thorns some credit. It was at least an interesting boss fight with RNG, strategy, and it felt like an actual level in a new game. It didn't feel like this. In general, this direction from the community has been really disappointing, because Platformer has the ability to be more than just a feature in GD. Platformer has the ability to be a place where you can make your own game. And I know it can, because people already have. You have people like GD: recreating Newgrounds Mario Flash games. You get levels like Semi-Quaver, a fully functional 4-key rhythm game with multiple songs you can pick from, which is insanely cool. In my opinion, the best platformer levels to come out so far are ones that lean on the more experimental side and focus more on making interesting gameplay rather than difficult gameplay. Semi-Quaver is an obvious example of this, as it's literally a fully functioning rhythm game within GD, but there are other examples of it too. In the Tower, the official platformer levels from RobTop, one of the most standout moments to me, and one of the things that actually really blew me away and I thought was really cool, was this part right here. There's this little skeleton guy against the wall, and you have to bomb the wall open to continue. And yes, you heard me correctly. A bomb drops from the side of the wall, and you actually click and pick it up, bring it over to the skeleton, drop it, to which you murder the skeleton, which is an oxymoron, and then blow up the wall. The amount of potential this has to me is astronomical, because the first thing I thought of when I saw this was Legend of Zelda. The thing that Master Game, the original reason platformer exists, was inspired by. Imagine creating a fully fledged Zelda clone in GD. Those are the things that seem really cool. And if you want to make a level an extreme and have the difficulty come naturally, make the level a full experience, because obviously if you have to beat an entire game within GD, and depending on that game's difficulty, that's going to be kind of hard. I have no doubt if Zelda 1 for the NES was inside of GD, that'd probably be at least an easy demon. If it sounds like I'm joking, I'm really not, because I see a ton of potential with this idea. There was a Flash game back in the day. It was called Mario, also known as Mari Zero, and it was Mario, but you had a fucking portal gun. And this idea was really cool, and a lot of people to this day still really like this Flash game. It's ideas like this that I think are really cool, and imagine doing something like that in GD. But it goes beyond that. experiences like this are possible, and there's so much potential and opportunity for interesting, unique, and fun experiences within this update. So with all of that being said, you can understand why when I turn my attention to I Wanna Be the Guy, and I realize this is what Geometry Dash platformer's first extreme demon looks like, and you can see why I'm just a little underwhelmed and I find it just a little bit boring. Fun fact about this level, originally Rob rated it by accident and then unrated it because he felt bad. He thought the level was too unfun and felt bad, but then due to a poll, he re-rated it because other people wanted it rated. You shouldn't have rated this level, Rob, I'm sorry. It just annoys me because the rate standards have never really factored in gameplay to begin with, and that better end up being different for platformer, because if the rate standards don't factor in gameplay for platformer, we're gonna have a lot of issues, and this mode will end up being doomed to fail. Regardless, it's very, very easy to look at the negatives. It is, and these are genuine problems I have with platformer mode, but not every level with this mode is bad, and there have been a lot, and I mean a lot, of good levels made for platformer mode. A lot of them are really, really cool. However, if we as a community want to fight against these lazy, garbage, unnecessarily difficult just for being difficult levels, just don't play them. Don't give them any attention, because these levels aren't special, they're not unique, they're just garbage and they're meant to fill space. It'd be more entertaining if the entirety of platformer mode was just the lobotomy trend. After all, levels like Jet Lag and I Wanna Be the Guy make me wish I had a goddamn lobotomy. At the same time, I want to also stress that the creators who make these levels are people, and I've played other levels of theirs and they have good levels, so don't go and harass them. They're just levels in a Square game that I don't like. It's not that serious. As a final note to leave you all on, I want to make it very clear. This video has been pretty negative, but overall, I love the update. I've been having a lot of fun playing it, and if you're wondering why the video is so negative despite that, well, quite simply, it's just because a lot of levels people have been making haven't been that good. And that's not because people are bad at creating, and it's not because the update is bad. It's because the update is new. It's going to take us months before we start getting some genuinely good levels. And for that standards, we have already gotten some genuinely good levels. Give it time, and this will end up being one of the more interesting features in the community. But as it stands right now, just look back on these kinds of mistakes and improve from them, and that's all you really need to do. But this game and this update are amazing, and I really don't want to come across as ungrateful, or I don't want to come across as saying the update's bad, because it's not. I've been really enjoying the update. So, just go ahead, keep creating, because the creators are the backbone of this community, as I always say, so, yeah. Thank you for watching.